After every race weekend, we give each driver a score between 1 and 10. And as we've reached the summer break, it's about time we add them all up and take a look at who's the worst and who's the best. But wait! Before we get there, we have a very special announcement to make. Next week, we have our next big F1 documentary coming out. You may remember last year, we had Tom Price, Triumph and Tragedy, and our new documentary is out next Friday. And here is a little sneak peek. This should be a video about the first ever French world champion. This should be a video about one of the fiercest teammate rivalries in the history of Formula 1.
Good turn. Out of the slipstream. Villeneuve coming down the inside, and Pironi is not having it. Pironi just moves across on Villeneuve. He says, "This is my race, I'm going to lead it."
This should be a video about Ferrari's return to championship glory in the 1980s. But it's not. This is Didier Pironi, the man who should have been 1982 Formula 1 world champion. Didier Pironi, the real 1982 Formula 1 world champion, is out on this channel next Friday. Hope you're looking forward to seeing that one, but now let's get back to the video with number 21. Number 21, Ollie Bearman. Ollie Bearman has the distinction of being the best and worst driver on this list. Filling in for Carlos Sainz in Saudi Arabia, Ollie Bearman was able to finish 7th and get a 10 out of 10 from me, which means that his overall score is 10, which is the lowest of all the drivers, but his average score is 10, which is the highest of all the drivers. Ollie did a great job in the Ferrari, and this was definitely a defining moment that would see him get the Haas seat for 2025, where hopefully he will not be at the bottom of this list this time next year. Number 20, Logan Sargeant. It's been another disappointing year for Logan in his second and what looks like it might be his final F1 season. He's had some bright spots such as the Silverstone race where he finished 11th, but overall it's been another tough year which has seen him finish dead last 5 times. Number 19, Zhou Guanyu. If you were to look at the championship standings, you may be forgiven for thinking that Zhou Guanyu has been better for the Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber team than Valtteri Bottas. He currently sits 19th while Bottas is 21st and last. But anyone who's actually watched this season knows that is not the case. Zhou had a great 11th place finish at Bahrain, which sees him sit above Logan Sargeant and Valtteri Bottas as the free drivers who are on 0 points. But since then, it's not gone well. He's qualified dead last 4 times and finished last 5 times, including in Monaco, where he was a whole 46 seconds behind Logan Sargeant in 15th place. Number 18, Sergio Perez. As of writing this, Sergio Perez is still in the Red Bull team, but the fact that I have to state that shows you how bad of a year Sergio Perez has had. The start of the season looked promising with podiums in Bahrain, Saudi, Japan and China, but he has not been on the podium again since that time. There have been a lot of low points for Checo, including an awful qualifying and a crash in Monaco, an awful qualifying and a crash in Canada, and an awful qualifying in Silverstone, where he didn't crash, but was lapped twice. Number 17, George Russell. When I added these scores together, I was really shocked to see George Russell was this low down, especially considering he's won a race this year in Austria. But then looking back at the results, they could have been a lot better. In Canada, he should have won and he finished 3rd. In Miami, he was absolutely nowhere in the sprint race. Then there was the crash, which apparently was Alonso's fault in Australia, and the disqualification in Belgium. Then a lot of his results have just been average. 7th in Japan, 6th in China, 7th in Imola, 8th in Hungary, and the unfortunate DNF in Silverstone. George has shown definite improvement through this year, but the bad results overall have dragged his score down. Hopefully in the second half of the year he'll be much higher than he is at this point. Number 16, Valtteri Bottas. I really hope this isn't the final year of Bottas' career, because he deserves so much better than the car he's been given by Sauber. He currently sits dead last in the drivers' standings, despite putting on some great performances which went pointless. 14th in Japan and 13th in Monaco and Canada are all he has to shout about as it stands. He has thoroughly outshone his teammates, but still will not be able to get anything out of the god-awful Sauber car. Number 15. Esteban Ocon. Ocon's final year at Alpine has been a mixed one. A decent race in China and point-scoring results in Miami, Canada, Spain and Belgium are his highlights. But he's dragged down by disappointing results in Britain and Hungary, and the lowest point being the aggressive lap 1 move on his teammate in Monaco, which ended his own race and could have been the final straw that ended his Alpine career. Number 14. Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll continues to Lance Stroll like nobody has ever Lance Strolled before. He occasionally has fantastic races, like the great recovery drive in Bahrain after a lap 1 incident that wasn't his fault, a 6th place finish in Australia, which is Aston's joint second best finish of the year so far. He completely outshone Alonso in Imola, where he finished 9th whilst Alonso was 19th and last. Great 7th place finishes in Canada and Silverstone, but then Saudi happens and he ends up in the wall, or China happens and he ends up in the back of Daniel Ricciardo, or Monaco happens and Alonso sacrifices his entire race to back up the pack to make sure Stroll has enough space to pit onto fresh tyres so he can chase the rest of the pack. Then 7 laps later Stroll hits the wall and has to pit because he got a puncture. Yeah, it's been a mixed one for Lance. Number 13. Daniel Ricciardo. It was a slow start for Ricciardo. He had a bad race in Saudi which saw him spin under no pressure whatsoever, a silly crash with Albon in Japan, but as the season has gone on, Ricciardo has been getting a lot better, scoring his first points in Canada, then points again in Austria and Belgium. Hopefully, this is an upwards trajectory for Daniel Ricciardo. Number 12. Alex Albon. Another strong and stable year for Alex Albon, who is currently Williams' only point scorer, securing points in Monaco and Silverstone. He's also had great performances that eventually went pointless. His worst race of the year has to be Miami or Spain, but overall, so far so good for Alex Albon. Number 11. Pierre Gasly. Gasly has had some massively unlucky moments this season. In Saudi Arabia, he had to retire on lap 1 due to a gearbox issue. In Silverstone, he wouldn't even make it to lap 1 before his gearbox gave up. And then that was followed by a hydraulic issue in Hungary, which meant he didn't finish the race. But around that, he has had some good races, including 4 points finishes in a row between Monaco and Austria. Hopefully, luck is on the side of Gasly for the second half of this season. Number 10. Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda has had his best ever season in 2024. 5 point scoring results in 6 races between Australia and Monaco, then points again in Silverstone and Hungary has seen Yuki outscore his far more experienced teammates so far this year. Although it seems that the people who make the decisions at Red Bull haven't noticed him yet. It's not all been perfect for Yuki, who had a very disappointing Canadian Grand Prix whilst his teammate would qualify in the top 5 and finish 8th, but overall it's been a good time to be Yuki Tsunoda. Number 9. Kevin Magnussen. It's looking like this could be Kevin Magnussen's final year in Formula 1, and he's going out on a high. He's had some fantastic races. He just missed out on points in Bahrain, Saudi and Imola, and he's only actually scored points twice, in Australia and Austria. But this does not tell the whole story of what he's done for the Haas team this year, where he's sacrificed his own race in Saudi and Miami to make sure Hulkenberg would score points for the team. It's not all been great for Kevin, who was responsible for the huge crash at the start of the Monaco GP, but with more good than bad, if this does turn out to be Magnussen's last year, then he can walk away with his head held high. Number 8. Fernando Alonso. Fernando has done the best he can for most of this year. The Aston is nowhere near the pace it had last year, but Alonso has been trying his best to make it work. He secured points in the first 6 races in a row, including a fastest lap in China, but that streak would end with possibly his worst race ever. At Imola, he would qualify last, and then in the race, he would finish last. He would have more good results after this race with points again in Canada, Silverstone and Belgium, but it's been another season for Fernando Alonso where he hasn't been able to show what he's fully capable of. Number 7, Carlos Sainz. In the first 4 races of the year, Sainz would have 3 podiums and 1 appendix out. And one of those podiums was his fantastic win in Australia just 2 weeks after getting said appendix removed. Since those first 4 races, Sainz has not been able to emulate those performances. He would be on the podium 2 more times across the year, but most of the time he's found in 5th or 6th place. His lowest point of the year would be in Canada, where a big spin would take him out and also take out his future teammate, Alex Albon. Number 6, Lewis Hamilton. Another mixed year for Lewis. He broke the internet before the start of the season with his announcement that he'll be joining Ferrari at the start of 2025, but at the start of this year, I even accused him of being checked out and not caring about the season. 7th in Bahrain, 9th in Saudi, 9th in Japan, but as the Mercedes has started to improve, the Lewis of old started to reappear. A good drive from 7th to 4th in Canada, his first podium of the year in Spain, and then what may be one of his best ever wins at Silverstone, which is pretty impressive for someone who has over 100 wins. Podium in Hungary and then another win in Belgium. Hamilton ended the first half of the season much better than he started, and he'll be hoping to continue that to end his final Mercedes year on a high. Number 5, Charles Leclerc. It's been a year to remember for Charles Leclerc. He finished the first 8 races of the year in the top 4, including 5 podiums, and the all-important emotional home win at Monaco. Since that Monaco win, Charles' luck has taken a turn for the worst. An awful strategy in Canada, 11th in Austria, 14th in Silverstone. Mix that in with Ferrari now looking like the 4th best car on the grid by quite a margin, and then it makes it even more impressive that he got 4th in Hungary and another podium in our final race before the summer break in Belgium. Number 4, Nico Hulkenberg. Nico Hulkenberg is often labelled as the guy who has the most races to never get a podium, and while that is a true statistic, he should instead be remembered as the driver with the most talent to never get a chance in a top car. This year has been great for Hulkenberg. Points in Saudi, Australia, China, Miami, Austria and Silverstone, including that 6th place finish in Austria, which is Haas's best finish in over 2 years. Then he followed it up with another 6th place in Silverstone, which is Haas's best finish in over 6 days. Hulkenberg had finished outside the top 11 just 3 times all year. And did I mention he's in a Haas? A great year for Hulkenberg. Hopefully when Audi come in, he can finally get that elusive podium. Number 3, Oscar Piastri. Piastri had a fantastic rookie season, but it's looking like 2024 is the season where he could announce himself as a top driver. The start of the season was a slow one for him and saw him finish 8th 3 times in the first 5 races, but in those other 2 races he would just be outside the podium in 4th place. In just his 2nd Monaco GP, he would miss out on pole by just over a 10th, then convert that to a 2nd place finish and his first podium of the year. He would get another podium in Austria with another P2, and 2 races later the inevitable happened and he won his first race. Unfortunately, it will be overshadowed by a bad McLaren strategy and team orders, but a win is a win, and I'm sure it'll be the first of many. At the final race before the summer break, he had possibly the best race of his career to finish 2nd, just 6 tenths behind Lewis Hamilton. His only finish outside the top 10 all year came at Miami, where even then he had a fantastic race but got caught up with an incident with Carlos Sainz, which saw him have to do a late pit stop. A great season so far for Oscar, and he seems to be getting better and better every race. Number 2, Lando Norris. 2024 will go down as the season that Lando fulfilled the promise that he and McLaren have set out for years. For a very long time, questions have been asked of Lando and his commitments to McLaren, and asked why he has not jumped ship to a different team. But this year, they've both come good, with the highlight being his first win after 110 races. He also had great races in Australia, where he got his first podium of the year, Imola, where he chased down Max Verstappen for the win but ultimately finished 2nd, another second in Canada, and then completing the McLaren 1-2 in the controversial Hungarian Grand Prix. It hasn't all been perfect for Lando. Much like Russell, there have been races where he should have done a lot better, such as Silverstone or Belgium, but so far, so good for Lando Norris. And number 1, Max Verstappen. It's been a tougher year for Max this year, but he still continues to lead the championship by a comfortable margin. He dominated the start of the year with 5 wins in the first 7 races. Then 2 more wins in Canada and Spain when the Red Bull was no longer the class of the field, and Max had to show off his true ability. Since Imola, the field has been much closer together, and yet Max has still been able to consistently lead the championship and get good results outdriving his Red Bull. There's no getting away from the fact that Max has made a couple of silly mistakes this year, such as the collision with Lando in Austria and the hit with Hamilton in Hungary, but overall this has been another good year for Max Verstappen, who is looking to seal his 4th World Championship. So there you go, that is our mid-season ratings. Let us know what you think in the comments down below, and who do you think will be going up or down when we do this again at the end of the year.